Jane managed to bring in a superb movement director, Imogen, who worked with us on a full day on how we would move, how your body changes, how you sit down and stand up, how you cook, how you hold a plate, all of this stuff, which is, if we hadn't done that, I don't think we would have been able to portray anything. It was absolutely invaluable to the whole process. So it's actually, I've never done a project without any dialogue. So I don't think it was daunting as much as it was exciting.
Jane and Sheena, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Okay, sure. Hi, I'm Jane Moriarty, and I'm the director of Kitchen Tales.
Hi, I'm Sheena Bhattessa. I am one of the producers and the actress in Kitchen Tales.
Very cool, awesome. We loved your short film. It was absolutely amazing, and I loved how you compressed time. Would you like to sort of tell us the genesis of it, how you came together, with the story? I know you have a writer on board. Did you work with a writer specifically, or was it sort of a written piece and that he or she presented to you?
Yeah, so the genesis of it did come from a writer. So a writer called Anupama Chandrasekhar, who I had worked with at the National Theatre, and we'd been talking about films, and she had a screenplay. She had basically this screenplay. And when I read it, I loved it, and kind of it sat with me for a bit. And then I worked with Sheena on a play in the West End, and we were looking for things to do together, more work. And I brought it to her, and she had a great reaction and wanted to be in it, which was amazing, and work together as director and producer. So sort of between the three of us, yeah, that was the genesis. And originally the script and the story was conceived and set in India, and the couple, that's what they were there. And then I spoke to Anu about, if we did the production here, what would that mean for the story? Here is London where we shot it, and then it actually affected the story, and their experience of immigration and how that impacted the relationship really came into it. So actually the story developed by changing the location, and we were really excited about that.
Very cool. Sheena, what is it about the story that really captured you when Jane brought it up?
Absolutely everything. The stories are often repeated. You see the same iteration in lots of different forms. This is one that you've just never read or seen or heard. And it's the story of that we can all relate to, all our families, all the generations, our parents, our grandparents, but you never see it on screen. So when I read it, and to this day, when I read it, it's something that I relate to, and it still sends shivers down my spine, because you don't see it anywhere. And that's such a shame, because it's that truth that we all know, whatever your background is. So that totally resonated with me. And I remember when I read it for the first time, I went, Jane, we have to do this. It's such a beautiful, beautiful story, capturing so much time, just succinctly, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's very little dialogue. Were you excited about that? Was it something you were was it a challenge that you were looking forward to? I know some actors are like, oh, that's it's a lot of emoting. So is it something that you're anticipating?
Both. Firstly, there was zero dialogue actually initially in the first draft. I think, Jane, there was absolutely no dialogue, so we added a little bit. But it's a beautiful thing. You don't have to worry about learning lines. So actually, for an actor, that's fantastic, especially having done a period piece with Jane on the stage and having to learn loads of lines. It's wonderful not to have to worry about that. And you're just set in the emotion and the relationship between the couple and our children. And nothing really needs to be said in daily living and daily life. You don't have to say so much when that relationship builds. It's just living in someone's space and how you communicate with each other without words. So it's actually, I've never done a project without any dialogue. So I don't think it was daunting as much as it was exciting.
Yeah. And Jane, was it a challenge for you in terms of the direction?
Yeah, like in a kind of creative way. Really, the replacement for dialogue in the concept of the film was food. And so Anu, the writer, and we were like, okay, can we make food the primary language of communication? And then I guess as well, coming from theatre where dialogue is really everything, it was really exciting to just park that to one side and really focus on the visual storytelling. But we did do a lot of like we talked a lot, like Sheena and the actor Nikesh Patel, who played the husband, about what was really happening in every moment, you know. So it wasn't like they weren't communicating, but the communication had other ways of being picked up and understood between them as a couple. Yeah, so we were really clear about what was happening, and then added just small bits of dialogue in to naturalize the style.
Actually, the dynamics between the actor were like a very, very interesting point to look at. And I was going to ask whether you've worked before, or was this just the fruit of the prep for this actual film? Because the dynamics are amazing.
Thank you. That's down to a fantastic director. But we hadn't worked together before, actually. But we did spend a lot of time discussing and relating to all of these experiences, which we could ourselves and our parents and our grandparents. So through that, we were able to relate and go, oh, yes, that's what it's like for me, or that's what happened. And going through old family pictures and cookery and dinners and, you know, just experiencing that. So we knew how we felt. And then you don't need the dialogue. So hopefully, you know, our mother tongue is the same language. And from the beginning, when we would speak off camera and all of that, we were in English. And then by the end of it, the fourth day, we were speaking and making jokes in our mother tongue, which was really lovely, actually, because it grew beautifully, and we filmed in chronological order. So it allowed us to go through that journey and build it from the lack of familiarity as a newlywed couple to the end, where we were joking with each other like we've known each other for 50 years. So it grew from the rehearsal space before and throughout the filming.
And Jane, was the script originally, you know, obviously within a contained set, or was that something that was necessitated because of COVID?
Oh, good question. That was part of the original concept, and yeah, just to keep it to this kitchen, like all the stories, it's just in the kitchen. So almost, I mean, obviously we didn't just leave the camera in one spot, but almost that thing of it's just like the kitchen is a character in itself, and there were just really small changes in production design over time. You know, we were like, how do we kind of characterize this space so that it travels with them over the 40 years of meal times? Yeah.
Just to add to that, the kitchen is traditionally a female space, led by the woman. And we tried in this instance to have the story. Both characters were obviously key, but it was led by the woman's story, because she didn't in this leave that space at all. You would see the husband come and go, but you wouldn't really see her leave that space. So to have it kept in that kitchen, which was, as I said, traditionally a female space, certainly in this culture, it was kept there.
Yeah, and actually a comment that Nikesh made about like, this is kind of an immigrant story, you know. It's there, like, she's really first time in London when she's in that opening shot of the film. And often when you see immigrant stories on screens, it's this sort of like sweeping, you know, narratives and the boat or the whatever, you know. And actually the reality of the experience is very, like, a lot of the nuance of the experience can happen on a domestic scale. And so, like, just focusing on that and seeing, yeah, the domestic and the intimate side of it was really important.
I actually found it very interesting to see that this is a immigration story for a family coming from the Orient, let's say, and myself coming from that type of area of the world, which is a bit closer to the West. But the role of the woman, as you specified, is often it's overlooked, like it's attributed as a male-dominated society in the Orient in general. But the beauty of it is that people looking from the outside don't see the matriarch role of the woman that's keeping the house together, keeping the family together. And through this journey, I mean, we could see the family coming apart a bit and then coming back on and then growing into another family. And was this a message that was, like, you know, written into the subtext of the story as to, like, show this hidden aspect of female participation in Oriental society? I
think probably yes, because it was a team of female filmmakers, you know, but also it's quite a subconscious thing for us to do, to centralize that story, and it's from life and from truth and from experience. So it's not, you know, it wasn't like an overt agenda, but it was definitely something that was in our hearts, and important to embrace the hero of or the heroine, in the everyday. What do you think, Sheena? I'm kind of like on reflect, after you have made the thing, you sort of you're so focused on the detail and what the story is, and I suppose it's part of why we were so connected to it.
Yeah, I think it's you mentioned the word everyday, and it's not overlooking the everyday, because there is so much in the everyday, and sometimes the woman in that gets neglected, and in fact that's a critical part of everybody's story. So subconscious and a conscious effort to centralize that.
It was lovely to see. I mean, putting her front and center at the middle of the story, and then in contrast with all the portrayal of Oriental women in general, who are usually seen as sometimes oppressed, sometimes playing second role, and this is just shines with her being center stage. So it was lovely. And
speaking to that there's no dialogue, she finds her voice in it, which I think is really nice, which is through cooking. She's kind of homesick and all of that, but when she really gets to express herself through the cooking, that comes out, and that becomes her expression of love and her pursuit of that. And I think the real sort of betrayal in the film is that love doesn't get ingested when the food isn't eaten. It's her expression of love and identity.
Speaking of cooking, the food looked delicious. So how was it on set?
It tasted delicious. I didn't cook any of it, and I'm very much more the rubbish cook at the beginning than the accomplished one at the end. So it was interesting and fun to do that. But we had incredible caterers come and prepare this as we kind of went through the 4 days, and it embellished it, and it became grander and grander and grander throughout.
Yeah, and it's beautifully shot. Food is not easy to make look good on camera. It's very difficult, and so Jen, you and your cinematographer did a great job of lighting all the food, and it looked fantastic. But also, let's talk about one of the biggest components to this beautiful piece, and that's the music. While there's not a lot being said, there's a lot being shown, and there's a lot of emotion behind the music. Could you tell us a bit more about how you worked with your composer, and what was sort of like that initial discussion about how you wanted to portray it through sound?
Sure. So our composer was Stephen Warbeck, who is just brilliant and has had, we were sort of thinking it was a dream scenario to have him come on board, and reached out with that in mind. He has worked on film, TV, and theatre, and in particular he had also done some previous British Indian productions, and so the blending of cultures in the music was a really key thing, and maybe I'll let Sheena speak to that a little bit more, but he fell in love with the story, and I think as something that is so bittersweet, the music was able to guide us through those emotional shifts, and really delicately. And again, he and I had met through the world of theatre on a show in the West End, and I'd admired his work on film. He composed for Shakespeare in Love and won the Oscar for that, and he'd also composed for other work that Nikesh had been in, so he was very familiar with looking at his face and coming up with ideas.
To drive the story through music is so important. When you watch something on mute, it takes so much away. So by having music, it drives something. It gives a whole different sensation. And because we didn't have dialogue, it was as important as everything else, if not more. And he's obviously a king of music, which was just a dream to have him on board. But to understand the kind of sounds that we would want without it being cliche. So it's not just about putting a guitar in. It's not just about having an Indian flute in. It's about really weaving these sounds and going through the peaks and troughs of the journey and taking the audience through that. Because you can watch something without dialogue, but if your sounds are going to take you there. Doesn't matter what expression we're giving, or what direction we have. If the sound doesn't guide you, then you're a bit lost. So he completely mastered that, bringing on, and this was all during COVID. So we didn't have the advantage of studios, nor did we have the budget of studios, but we didn't have the advantage of studios either. But he managed to compose, bringing in 3 or 4 instrumentalists who all recorded from their own studios. It was then brought together to piece it together, which in itself is genius for all of the musicians involved. And thanks to Stephen's genius to create something that would work magically through all of it as a score. So it's difficult to find someone who can really nail East coming to the West and the journey, and also decades of time that you go through. There's so many different factors to hit throughout this journey. And I think he did it beautifully.
One thing I wanted to point out also was, I mean, for me at least, it was very impressive, the aging process of the actors, the makeup. I mean, that was so gracefully done. We've seen huge productions who mess up this so badly, even with CGI and all that. And this was so gracefully done. It was so natural. And did you have someone specialized in this, or was it your regular makeup artist, someone who's a set artist who just, put their touch?
It was that I caused so much stress for the actors over the filming that they aged.
Natural.
No, we did. We had an amazing, we had an amazing makeup and hair designer, Amrita Mudan. But then we also teamed up with an incredible prosthetics designer, Sunita Parmar, who, she managed to pull in resources from all, like, she's had an incredible career. She's worked on, Game of Thrones and Batman and everything. So she was calling up from favors from some big teams, but for our little project. But again, it was just, like a deep connection to the story that made her so passionate to get those details right. But like in terms of measuring the faces, which has to be done, we did that remotely. Like, it was the most bizarre, we just had to overcome those COVID obstacles. And Sheena, do you want to talk about what it was like from your point of view, like putting all of that on your face and the physicality and stuff?
So, we aged up. We had to age down as well, because much to our dismay, we're not 18 years old anymore. So we had to also look younger. And this team of magicians was superb. It went, as we, hair extensions and various other bits and bobs, until the Monday when we were sat in a makeup chair for 4.5 hours, gradually doing that aging process with pizza boxes of stuff which they would put on our faces, and aging marks on our arms and necks, and everything was superb. So there's obviously the hair and the makeup and that incredible team that worked magic, but there's also the physicality. So it's not just how you look. You can look 60, 70 years old, but if you're bouncing around like an 18-year-old, it completely destroys that image. So Jane managed to bring in a superb movement director, Imogen, who worked with us on a full day on how we would move, how your body changes, how you sit down and stand up, how you cook, how you hold a plate, all of this stuff, which is, if we hadn't done that, I don't think we would have been able to portray anything. It was absolutely invaluable to the whole process. And us working together from a young couple who may be in love, don't know each other, kind of, flirting with the idea of we're going to get married, and, building that through to getting to know each other and falling in love, to having a baby, and how that dynamic changes, how a mother changes holding a child, a father aging through going to, the daily brutal London life or the UK life as you grow older, and then illness and, all of this stuff kicks in, and how you move, and then you've got to take tablets, and all of that to process and transition is, all of this can be done. But if we don't successfully execute that through our movement, all of that hard work and 5 hours in a makeup chair is destroyed. So working on that movement to get that aging across was imperative, and it was great for us to learn and try and do all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think you guys did a fantastic job of compressing time. It was really well done, and I really appreciated how you used food and music to pivot through the decades. That was really, really beautiful. And then I know Patrick and I were talking about the message of the film. Patrick, did you want to dive into that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on that with the female role in it, but does it have a bigger message to carry through the today's world with the immigration flow happening across the continents, and showing that normality aspect of the life of the immigrant. I mean, these guys are not monsters, they're just regular people trying to make it. Did you try to push that narrative a bit through the film?
Yeah, I think like for us, it's about telling a story, but amazingly, everyone who worked on the film, it reminded them of their own family. And I think the more specific that we got, like we, you know, it was a lot, so much attention on the authenticity and the detail of the food and the costume and everything, you know, really was that specificity and authenticity was key. And I think the further we went with that, the more universal it's become, because you go, oh, they have this special gold box for, you know, like that this family have, my family have, you know, we have a special cupboard, or, you know, you kind of connect to the details in that way. And I think, yeah, just the connecting of generations. And then from a story point of view, the message of, you know, what goes unsaid in a relationship, very much the story at the center of it is a kind of upside down love story, and about trying to find the love again. And so, yeah, I think it just, one of the messages would be, don't miss your anniversary meal. Communicate well, you know, and listen to the unspoken signals from your family, from your loved ones.
I can add to that. I think just to add, it's the relatability that's a really key message as well, which Jane, you said already, but immigration is such a big topic globally. And by watching this, because everybody related to it, and our set was incredibly diverse, and everybody related to it. This was a labor of love for everybody, because they related to it. So you just see that we got a story of an immigrant couple, and considering everything that's going on in the world, and we're all much closer, and our experiences are much more related than we all think. So as a key message, we're all closer in experiences than anyone thinks otherwise. So that's the key relatability, is don't overlook someone else's experiences, because yours are probably pretty similar.
Yeah, and you know, a much smarter person said somewhere, sometime, that stories are sort of a flag for, you know, for cultures to rally around. But I also think that, you know, this isn't just an Indian story, right? This is a British story, and I caught a small reference to unionizing issues in the 1970s, early in the beginning of the film. Like, oh, that's a great way to kind of tie in, you know, local history with an immigrant story, and to start off the entire arc.
I'm so pleased you noticed that detail. There's a lot of like really subtle detail in the sound.
Yeah.
And there's a reference to Brexit even at the end.
I didn't want to bring that up, but now that you've done it, but yeah, it was really well. I really appreciated how you weaved that in. It was really well done. Where does Kitchen Tales go from here? It was at Newport Beach Film Festival. Where could people catch it next? If you know, either in the US or in EU or anywhere?
Well, I guess the best thing for people who are interested to see it would be to keep in contact with our social media, because any other festivals and screenings will be communicated on there. So yeah, more film festivals, and yeah, well, hopefully it'll be completely available for people to watch down the line.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful piece, and thank you for your time, for talking to us.